Hi everybody, I wanted to take a few minutes to make a short video about how to make some of your own tools. Now, as we talked about, some people are going to be able to continue with their plaster carving project. Fantastic. Other people were not able to pick up their work, or are not going to be able to, whatever the reason. You're not going to continue with that work, so instead you're going to be making use of our alternative assignment, which is vegetable carving, or whatever soft material. As I said, soap, vegetables, spam if you're really encouraged to do so. I've done it before, it's kind of goopy. Anyhow, either way, you're going to need some of your own tools. Now, we talked about picking up some of your own. You have probably, some basic carving tools. Yes, at the school we had Dremels and all kinds of other stuff. But for the most part, we were really just using basic carving tools. Things like scrapers, razor knives, maybe you're meaning like a utility knife or anything like that. Basic point and pick tools. So what I want to be able to show you how to do is make some of your own tools at home. If you do have some of these rather, fantastic. But for what we're doing, both plaster and with the softer material vegetable carving assignment, you can use basically anything you want to create your forms. Yes, plaster is much harder, but as we talked about, if you get it wet, it actually becomes softer and easier to carve. So that will definitely be the key. But if you're doing plaster carving or vegetable carving, whichever one you're going to need, or whichever one you're doing, you're going to need tools. If you have them, outstanding. However, basic stuff you're probably going to make use of with the carving tools, your X-Acto knife, your standard X-Acto. If you have that, awesome. If you don't have the exact brand, fine too. But basically any kind of razor blade knife. Some clay carving tools. Now again, these will not work for plaster. Plaster is even wet, it's still too hard, and you're more likely just to damage most of your clay carving tools. They're not overly well built. They're perfectly fine for soft clay or things like vegetables or potatoes. You can get into the potato there. Or modified, make your own tools. And that's exactly what I want to take time to show you today. So, with that, we're going to get to actually making a few tools. So, just want to go over some of the tools. As I said, your basic X-Acto knife works really well for a lot of this sort of thing. Make sure you have a sharp blade. If you don't have sharp blades, well, be extra cautious because a dull blade, especially something as fine as an X-Acto, takes more force to carve. And it's much easier for you to push too hard, go right through the material, and into your hand. And the biggest thing you want to avoid, in addition to not doing that anyway, is with this time right now, trying not to have to go to the hospital for anything additional. So use a sharp knife. There we go. The other things, you have basic razor knives. These, I'll show you in a moment, how to really just attach this to a basic handle, make it a lot safer to use, but this is still an excellent tool to use. Plus, these blades are a lot cheaper, and you can get these by like the 50 or 100 pack. Really handy. If you happen to have one on hand, I have a 3D printer. I was able to download a file and print my own handle for this. Fancy, yeah, bolts in, but again, I'm going to show you how to make make a handle for one of these knives. So you have these. Other basic tools, sure, your basic clay tools, some scrapers, some gouges. These wider ones might not work as well. Yes, they have a really nice large head, but that might not remove material very well depending on what you're working with. Soap or a potato? Sure. Something more fibrous like broccoli or something? Not so much. It's going to get gummed up. A watermelon? If you want to sacrifice a whole watermelon, yeah, that'll definitely do it. Other excellent tool is, of course, your point tool. This will be excellent for just general scribing, but also you can make use of this tool to carve in and actually scribe onto your piece because you're going to need to figure out how to lay this out. Now, there's the prefab tools, or again, your handles, but I'm going to show you how to make some of your own tools because some of these are going to be the best tool you can make use of, largely because you can modify any tool that you need to fit the job you need, and that's indispensable for anything. Now, some of your basic tools, boom, fork and spoon. These are some of the handiest tools you can start from to make your own. Now, granted, don't use the good china or anything, or silver or anything like that. Your old dollar store or cafeteria spare to silverware, definitely where it's at. But what you can do with any of these is flatten them, you can bend them, you can reshape them. They work really, really well. Other things that you can use is like just general assorted lengths of wire. Thank you, Professor Farnsworth. Especially this one is a larger gauge, looks to be more like a 10 gauge, something to that effect. I'm not certain. But one of the things about copper, it is soft, but it work hardens. So depending on what kind of tool or what kind of material you're using rather, this can work really well. And yeah, that was taken out of an actual junction box. I straightened it a little bit, but it's still got a little bit of a corkscrew left over at the tip. What you can do, basic pair of pliers, and just like we did with the wire project, you can use those pliers just to mush parts down. Straighten it out. Takes a little bit of effort, and especially when it wants to fight you a little bit, but basic tool there, great. Now I have, more or less, a replacement for my point tool, just a chisel, or a point tool, whatever. If you need it sharper, use the clippers. Don't cut it just flat square, cut it at an angle, and you'll end up with an even sharper point. Again, make sure, be aware, that is a sharp point. The other side here has more of a hook to it. For those harder to reach places, yeah, leave the hook. Bent it in, got a little bit there. I'll use my pair of pliers here. Clip it again. Now I have a hook tool to get down inside of something. So if I was trying to get into a recess, if I was trying to get up and around, really handy and really soft. And it's pliable. You can reshape this however you might need. If you need like an odd spot, whatever. Very handy tool. Now, some of the other things you'll definitely need is a hammer of some sort. This could be any type. You're not doing any serious hammering, so a small light hammer is fine. And I'm going to make use of this plate of steel. You could use the sidewalk or a rock, whatever. I'm just going to use this as a hard spot to make use of the hammer so I can slam some stuff down. Now, when I start doing some of this work, I will cut the audio because you don't want the heavy pling sound, but we'll do that. Other tools. Yes, like I said, you can make a scribe tool if you don't already have one, but one of the other ways, if you don't have wire or you need something a little bit harder than this, what you can use, like I said, basic tools, some old nails, and a couple chunks of wood. Or, again, chunk of wood for the razor knife, and all you're doing really is just taping that on there. So, one of the other handy bits, your old trusty duct tape. When won't you need duct tape, especially for art? So, let me clear this off, and we'll make a couple tools. So the first thing, in lieu of an X-Acto knife, or a handy-dandy 3D printed handle for your razor knife, or razor blade rather, your basic cutting razor blade. Now, if you get these trapezoidal ones or your square ones, whatever. None of it really matters. All I'm doing is finding some way to better hold this blade. Yes, you can carve with this, but frankly, it gets pretty dangerous because your fingers are really close to the blade, and you're very easily want to actually hold the blade something more like this to get a better position, and now your fingers are right against the edge of a razor blade. So, what's to do? Grab the chunk of wood out of my scrap bin trash, and I'm just going to tape it on there. Good old duct tape with the extra satisfying sound of duct tape that of course always splits off. Just a length. Now, granted this is a bit overkill because I used a rather large stick, but all I'm doing is just duct taping that on there. And the reason I'm saying duct tape, you want something a little bit hardier than say like masking tape, but something like this blue tape is a bit stronger, so you're probably fine. But this will work really well. Now, if you have access to like a smaller piece of wood or anything like that, yeah, obviously that's going to work a lot better. Or even something as small as like a wooden dowel. That would be a lot better. But at very least, now I have a handle for my razor blade, and I can use that to carve into things. And it keeps my hands, fingers away from the blade. So, reminder, you have Ideally, razor sharp knives. Remember, cut away from yourself. Don't hold a piece, pull it toward you. Where's that going? Right toward you. Don't do that. So, simple tool. All you really need, some wood and some tape. I'll get that out of the way. Now, other tools to make, simple ones, the old fork and spoon. These are handy. I'm going to use this little chunk of steel, but you can use, like I said, the sidewalk. Don't use the good countertops, anything like that. And a hammer. Now, this is just one of my go-to crossbeam hammers. It's no different than a standard claw hammer. This works just fine. It's just different hammers that I have. Now, for the spoon, you could easily just carve with this. It works fine. It's a nice big gouge. If it has different profiles. If you look closely, this teaspoon has more of a point on the end, and it's a wider curvature on the side. So if you needed a softer curve, you could bowl out, scoop out with the side. If you need a little bit sharper one, you could do that. If you have a belt sand or anything, you could sand this to a point, and I'll actually do that in a moment to demonstrate. I have one, but there you go. Other things, you have something like your basic fork. Now, yes, one of the big parts about all these is they're designed to fit the hand, but not quite the way we're doing it. Unless you eat, well, I'm not here to judge how you eat. But unless you need 4 streaks at the same time, and maybe you do, this would be an excellent way to create waves, parallel lines, anything like that. So maybe grab a couple of spoons. If you just need 1 point, well, then do exactly that. Take a spoon, fold a couple of times back. Maybe you need 2. Grab a pair of pliers, bend these back. Like I said, don't grab anything out of the good drawer. You're definitely going to destroy these, and they're not going back how they were. But if you need 1 or 2, there you go. Just need the 1, go for it. And remember, if it's decent enough metal, this is not a high-dollar spoon nor is it a spoon. A high-dollar fork. Yeah, there you go. See, they will snap sometimes. So, what's one of the more important things we discussed? Wear your glasses. Put safety glasses on. But now you've got this single point. Perfect. This is exactly good for scribing, anything like that. The reason I say is fork over, say, like a piece of wire, or possibly even a clay carving point tool, because these tools, it's just a piece of steel inserted into this aluminum handle. It's not a super high quality bond. They work great for soft materials, but not for harder things. So if you're actually still pursuing the carving project with plaster, fork is probably your best option. The copper, definitely better on a vegetable or something like that. Same thing with the point tools, but this is an excellent way to get around not having either of these. Put these aside. Back to your spoon. Maybe what you actually need is a much deeper gouge. And here's why I brought this out. Now, what I'm going to do is fold this spoon over like a taco. Again, hammer time. Now, I'm putting it up on end. I have my glasses on. But I'm just going to lightly fold this over. Apparently, hammering on the table, my recorder didn't like that either. So, all I did was just fold this over. All it is now is a little bit easier to get down in and scoop into something. And if the handle isn't quite fitting for what you wanted, you can usually bend these by hand. Now you got more of a ladle shape, but with this bend in it, it's a bit easier to hold on to in your hand. And now you can hold it, work it as a scoop, or hold it up on end, drag it, gouge it, whatever. This makes for a pretty handy tool. Yeah, you just destroyed a couple of bits of silverware, but ideally you weren't using anything that was actually of much value. So, couple dollar investment and you're good to go. So, those are just a few methods for making some really simple tools, but they'll work perfectly well for what we're trying to do. So thank you very much for watching. Try them out, make your own tools, make your own modifications to your own stuff. It's very simple. All you're using is to carve soft media. So thank you very much for watching. In the next video, I'm going to show you the basics of laying out and how you're going to reduce material from a solid object down to get your actual object that you want.